The content presented in this podcast and YouTube show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this show. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guest, and producers of this show are not responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your use of or reliance on any information presented.
Andrea, can you hear us?
Many years ago, I died for 26 seconds. There are so many people in this world that have experienced life events that have led to their soul purpose. Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea will bring you these significant life events that demonstrate how to use those moments for guidance and life purpose. These are our stories. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea Lynn. Today's guest is here to talk to us about how you can become a leader in your life. Let's welcome Dr. Nina Ahuja. Hi, Nina. How are you?
Hi, Andrea. I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. And I'm really excited for all the genius that you can bring to everyone. I want to start with you just painting the picture on leadership and what it looks like in your personal life versus your professional life.
Sure. So the way that I see leadership, it's really about being in alignment with your values in all that you do, in what you say, the decisions you make, the actions you take. We live in a world, in our personal circumstances as well as our professional circumstances, so that our being able to be in alignment and live in that true authenticity can be very challenging. In my experience personally, I've hit challenges in my life. I've been married, divorced, remarried into a blended family. And so there are different challenges that come with that, where I have certain values and expectations for the way things go. There's not always that alignment. So it's a struggle of recognizing who I am within all of that and then living that out in a way that feels true to myself as well. Professionally as well, I'm a surgeon, I'm an eye surgeon, and have been in practice for 20 years in various roles in education as well as leadership.
Can you give us an example of a time where you had to kind of pivot and get back in alignment, where there was a struggle with your leadership and what you did to get back on track? What does this pivot look like? I'm assuming there's things that you assess, right? When you go to make this pivot, you're assessing certain things. What are you assessing?
Well, that's a great question. So in my case, the first thing that I needed to assess is how committed am I to having this particular leadership role? So the first consideration was, do I really want to carry on with this responsibility, knowing that it really is a mission-oriented commitment that I've made? In looking at that, I was looking at what was my vision for this? Why was I motivated to taking on this role? What impact was I hoping to have? And if I decided to let it go, what does the other side of that look like? Do I still have opportunities to have impact? Do I still have opportunities to feel engaged and connected? Because for me, leadership in both education and in administration, those things really help me feel connected to my work and purpose. So that when I was looking at the current situation with the potential opportunities for other situations, whether it be leaving the role or pivoting the role, I was really looking at it from the lens of how do I feel about this and how does this work towards what I ultimately want to have as an impact. So that was number one. Then number two, it was how receptive is the environment around me to making a pivot that I think would work well for me and be in alignment. But if you do make it to that leadership role, it really is up to you to do because you're passionate about what you're doing. So the third thing is, where can the wins be so that the most number of people in the circumstance actually can benefit from it, so that you're always going to hit conflict. There will always be barriers. But if you can find something as you're pivoting in your leadership that is going to benefit more than just you and does still align in some way to your personal and professional vision and mission, then those considerations can, help you make a decision one way or the other as to which way you'd like to go.
What I hear you saying with all that is authenticity
Hmm.
is the beginning step, right? Being
Yeah.
authentic to yourself and really checking in with yourself and following through with your values and making sure that this whole process is going to align authentically with who you are, because otherwise you're not going to be able to carry out this leadership role. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And in fact, part of what I do outside of my role as a surgeon is I have an organization called Docs and Leadership, where I teach people how to get into alignment and how to leverage understanding how the brain works in their leadership, so that you can get to a place where you're aligned with your values. So where that starts really is self-awareness and paying attention to what are the situations that trigger me? Why is that triggering me? Why is there some disconnect that I'm reacting in the way that I am, whether it be a positive reaction or a negative reaction? And the more we do that, the more we reflect and the more we understand our motivations for things, the more it allows us to be in alignment and find that space of alignment where we can really be authentic.
I think it's so important to talk about that mental health aspect when we are becoming a leader, right? You're not ready to be a leader if you don't have your mental health and your triggers and all those things under control. So is that part of your program too?
Yeah, so initially it's basically doing various exercises to understand your identity as a leader in your personal life and your professional life, and then looking at what is it that you hope to accomplish, what impact do you hope to have, what legacy do you hope to leave, and then from there building in some of the more practical leadership competencies and skills that we learn in business school. So I've done all of that education formally at some of our top business schools here in the country in Canada, and so it's building a platform upon which you can then just grow and evolve over time. I think leadership grows in the various phases of our life. So I believe that we're a leader in everything that we do, whether it's something in your personal life or professional life. So the analogy that I like to give is, if you think of a pebble falling into a body of water, the pebble represents every decision that we make. It represents, as an individual decision, it represents every individual interaction. It represents every individual action, so that when you drop that pebble into the water, depending on what that pebble is representing in that particular instance, you're going to create a ripple effect. If it's a thoughtfully thought out action or word, it'll create a ripple that's gentle, but it'll have impact. It'll be a nice impact. If it's something that's very aggressive, not well thought out, or just something where you want to create a huge ripple, well, you can do that too. And that can be positive or negative. Typically, you want to create ripples that are manageable. And so you're not capsizing boats, you're maybe rocking them a little bit to get people to think about things. So I like to start with understanding where and why do we choose to say things as we do, make decisions as we do, create our path as we do. And the more we understand that over time, the better we can be in making those decisions and having that leadership. Our experiences all impact that. So that's where I don't think we're ever perfect leaders, but I think we can improve day by day, right from the start of our leadership journey through to the end of our life, because we're leaders every day in what we do. So
Mhm. So I was looking at some statistics on leadership, and it was talking about how a very large percentage, around 70% of people, well, I think it was like 79% will quit their job because they don't feel appreciated. And, 70% say that they would work harder if they felt appreciated. And so appreciation is a huge thing for employees. And so as a leader, how do you get people to feel appreciated?
that's a great question. And those stats are very, very true. It comes down to creating a certain culture. I
Mhm,
really believe that culture starts at the top, from the leader of that particular team or circumstance or organization or unit,
mhm,
whatever scope that takes. The culture is so important because it creates a certain energy field. And I believe that if you're in the energy sphere, and this is a huge part of your work as well,
yeah.
that it's very contagious and people take it on. It comes down to even mirroring, and there's so many elements to it that creating a proper culture, which is a psychologically safe environment where people feel that they can express their opinions, that they're valued, their opinions are legitimately and sincerely heard, that you're not just a checkbox that is a force of presence within a team. Ensuring that there's a genuine
Yeah.
seeing of one another is so critically important. What I've found in my experience over the years, both in leadership positions and in working with leaders as a coach or as a mentor in their journey, is that those who are the most secure in their leadership are the ones who are willing to be most honest about their both successes as well as failures. Because what that does is that creates an environment where people really feel that they can be themselves, that they're not being looked down upon, that it really is a culture and sphere within which you can make a mistake and it's seen as an opportunity for growth or a lesson to be learned. So I believe that if you can create that culture and have open dialogue and really genuinely want to and care for people's opinions and feeling of their satisfaction and fulfillment, I think you can really take away or at least address to a great degree that feeling that people have of not feeling appreciated. I think you can really turn that around. And I've seen that in my own teams in my different circumstances. The challenge gets to be is that not everyone is receptive to feedback, which you can create a psychologically safe environment. But if the person themselves isn't open to that for whatever reason, because of their own circumstances and the lens through which they view the world, that can challenge that culture that you're trying to create. And some people just won't feel appreciated no matter what you do. As a leader, though, then I think it's very important to work with that person and to understand their perspective. Where are they coming from? What pain points have they experienced in the past that you can then address? So I believe that you can help everyone really feel present and seen and appreciated in their circumstances. The leader, though, does have to be self-aware in that and then be able to have the tools to navigate those challenges.
Self-awareness is definitely key, but what the word that just keeps coming to mind when you're saying all this is, well, two words. Be vulnerable. I think if as a leader, if you're vulnerable with all your employees and you show that you're a person too and not above them, because I think sometimes that there's a disconnect with leaders and employees because some leaders very much feel like they are above their employees, right? And
Absolutely.
on the pay scale, yes, they are, right? But as a human, they are not. And it is very important that they just be vulnerable and be seen as just another human and
Yeah.
not somebody above them. And I think that can create such a great line of communication when we have this vulnerability with ourselves and with our employees. If you're sharing intimate things with them, they're more likely to come to you and share things with you. And they're also going to establish more of a trust in you when you're vulnerable. Does that ring true, you think, to leadership?
I think that does ring true. And I
Yeah.
think in healthcare, we as physicians and surgeons, that's very important to consider when it comes to dealing with your colleagues and your nursing staff, for example, and your support people who are helping the wheels turn and to make this happen. And then even in your interactions with patients. Now, we have to have certain boundaries, of course, so that that trust isn't lost in our competence as their healthcare provider. But vulnerability is a huge point. It is a huge connector. The one question that I often get when I'm mentoring leaders, though, is, if I'm vulnerable with my employees, how do I maintain that sense of authority? Which is
Yes.
a
It's a great
great
question.
question. Yeah. And the answer to that question from my perspective is that one of the reasons for the differences in the pay scale is the additional skill set that you bring to the table as a leader, so that
Mhm.
in being vulnerable, part of your role is to coach, is to develop, is to support. And so the vulnerability can come into play in those elements as well. So, for example, if I'm talking to a faculty member who's having difficulty with a colleague and they're just feeling as though they're not being heard, well, then in that instance, I can share that I can empathize with you
Right.
because I went through this. This is what I learned in that
Mhm.
situation. And based on that and my experience, why don't you try this
Mhm.
element and let's come back and see how that works. So that the experience that you're bringing to the table as a leader who's got more experiences, which is why you're in that leadership role, those are nuggets that you're there to add. However, in order for those nuggets to really land, the vulnerability becomes key. So
Mhm.
that's where you are able to maintain the authority in position. And I don't mean through arrogance,
Right.
but I mean from the fact that you are someone there who's there to run the division, the department, the unit, whatever that is, that's where those nuggets become really important. And they're to greater or lesser magnitudes depending on what the circumstance is in that given scenario.
So I'm curious because I know you're in healthcare, but do you think you have tips that you could share with people about how to become a leader in any job?
Absolutely. I mean, the principles that I teach in my programs are
Yeah.
100% universal. In terms of how to develop as a leader, I think there are a few things. Number one, take an inventory of what you believe your strengths are.
Mhm.
Take an inventory of what you believe your weaknesses are or where you could use support.
Mhm.
Take an inventory of areas where you think you could develop and what you're interested in
Okay.
developing, and then look for mentors and guides who have achieved what you hope to achieve. So those four things become foundational to establishing kind of a zone or an incubator, so to speak, within which you can develop. And then beyond that, then do an inventory of yourself as a person. What's important to you? What are your values? What impact do you want to have? So there are the two elements to it. One is the practical side of it in terms of the execution. What can you bring to the table? And then there's the other side of it, which is internally, what fulfillment do I hope to achieve? And
Mhm.
then those two things, when you bring them together, you can then basically plan a path for yourself of
Yeah.
development that moves you along that journey.
Yeah, that makes sense. Then you're able to figure out, okay, which direction am I going to take this and who should I be reaching out to as a mentor? Because once you have a clear picture of where you want to go and who you are and what's in alignment with you, you can look for like-minded mentors. So that's great advice. Can you share your most difficult challenge that you have faced in leadership?
Absolutely. It happened fairly recently, actually. Surprisingly, that is true. So as I mentioned, I had a thriving surgical practice and I was looking to transition my path. I really wanted to slow down my practice and work very, very part-time.
Okay.
And surprisingly, I hit roadblocks. Basically, it was a matter of getting buy-in from individuals who really should not have had a say, and it got blocked. And so that was one of those times where I had to really look and say, like, what's important to me here? I either continue on with my practice, which is no problem, it's doing very well, or I really take that risk and shift to this area which is unknown in many ways to me in the sense that it's not established. My work is established in the area, but bringing it out to the world is something that was quite a new venture that I had already invested a lot of time in and resources. But this was going to be like the full time thing now. Still operating, I still do surgery, but it was a definite shift in career path.
Mhm.
And so when I did my inventory of the things that we've talked about so far, it became very clear that this is something that I believe in strongly. I think it can really help people. It can help healthcare. It can help beyond healthcare. We're in a time where there is so much turmoil that understanding how to lead oneself first is critical. We all need to be leaders in our own worlds, personally and professionally, so we can have that ripple effect that extends beyond us to really work with each other's ripple effects and hopefully create this positive wave and surround of energy that's going to uplift us instead of continue dragging us down.
Mhm.
So that was a really challenging moment for me where it was a combination of self leadership in the context of greater leadership opportunities and then finding those pivots where, okay, if I shift out of this space, understanding now the degree of support that truly is there or not there,
Mhm.
what can I shift into so I'm creating new opportunities for myself? And I've landed in national level leadership again with this great opportunity to be here with you. So thanks again for the invite,
Of course.
and also to bring my message to the world and to put these programs out there that I honestly truly believe are transformative.
I want to talk a little bit about mental emotional because I'm curious, what was your mental and emotional process when you were saying, the challenge it did hurt your feelings, right? You went through this challenging time, and you did have your feelings hurt at one moment because it didn't go as planned. And obviously that's how things are when they're really difficult. There's some sort of roadblock, and they can be bothersome to us because we have been working so hard at something and we feel like we are not being met with, I guess fairness would be the word. Like
Mm.
we're not being met with fairness. And how do you deal with that, like mentally and emotionally? Because I think, I mean, these are great tips on how to become a leader, but we hit struggles as a leader. So what would be that mental emotional process to kind of regain yourself?
Yeah, that I love that question. It is such a foundational question too, because so much of leadership and dealing with obstacles is being able to regulate and manage your emotions.
Mhm.
I remember when that whole circumstance was happening, I was emotional. Like I was upset, I was crying, I was angry, and I
Mhm.
cry when I'm angry too. So it was sadness and anger, and it was definitely not just a rainbow-filled day,
Yeah.
or few. Uh, so for me, my outlook is a key in that. I've hit major challenges in the past. So, for example, when I went through medical school, I struggled. I was a top student all the way along my academic career. Med school hit it, got into self doubt a big time to the point where even though I had really great evaluations and everything I was doing, I failed my licensing exam the first time. So that was a big deal for me.
Mm.
And at the same time, I had gotten into one of the most competitive specialty programs across the country. So, talk about imposter syndrome. I went through that. So, what that taught me though is I was able to pull up my socks and I did very well in my residency and was able to now leverage those experiences to bring to the world a different level of empathy in the world of medical education, where I'm very passionate about supporting medical trainees through the journey. In having had those experiences and seeing the outcome or connecting the dots, I see the pattern and what has been very helpful to me in my journey now. I see these things as boulders. And so we're going down a path and you hit one boulder and then you're shifted into a different direction. Then you hit another boulder and then you're brought to another direction on that path. So that the boulders that we hit, so long as we're open to recognizing those things as opportunities, we're eventually led down a path to what we're supposed to actually be contributing back to the world. So
Mhm.
that if I had not hit the big boulder and it's felt like a gazillion ton weighted boulder, it may have continued on. So what it's done is it's created opportunity and space for me to really pursue this mission in a very real way.
Mhm.
And I've had other opportunities come from it just by having that path pivot so dramatically. This is where it brought me to a point where I was actually helping to champion a bill for a national eye care strategy for Canadians, which passed. That's where I was able to present to the Senate. Had I not had that big boulder drop along my path, I would not have been looking for those other opportunities. And when I looked for other opportunities for leadership, those led me into these opportunities. And so the impact that I'm able to have now is a whole other level than where I would be had that boulder not come along my
Mhm.
path and caused that pivot. So the outlook of obstacles and challenges being redirectors
Mhm.
into the right path is what really gets me through those challenges. The caveat to that, though, is I am working as hard as I can. I am being sincere in my efforts and in alignment as much as possible with my values and being true to my word and everything else that comes along with being authentic, as we talked about in the
Mhm.
beginning.
Yeah, I think like you said, leverage. Use it as leverage. And
Mhm.
it's funny how we can make the choice though, right? In the moment when this boulder comes at us, it's like, what are we going to do with this? And I think most people, their immediate response is probably dropping some swear words and wanting to rip their hair out because what am I going to do with this? This is not the plan.
Right.
But we can also make that choice that, you know what, like I'm going to be excited because there is something better on the other side of this. Like I am clearly
Yeah.
meant to redirect and use this, as you're saying, use this as leverage. Like there is a way that this is going to be even better than I planned. Let me just figure it out instead of sitting in that rut. And I think that's really important for people to realize, whether it's in the medical profession or not.
I agree. And I did have those swear words too, though, for full transparency. I mean, I did give myself that moment, but I agree with
Yeah.
everything you said.
I mean, I'm just being real. Like, you're not
Good.
going to move through it with grace always,
No,
like
and
it's
that's
okay
okay.
to be like, say what you want to
Absolutely.
say. And then, okay, I'm smart enough. I know better. Like, what do I
Yeah.
do with this? And
Yes.
figure it out and go from there.
Yes.
So, to wrap this up, do you have top tips that you give people that are trying to step into leadership?
I do. Number one is understand who you are as best as you can and the impact that you want to have,
Okay.
because that is foundational to the path that you're going to create.
Mhm.
Number two, be very open minded and don't think inside of a box.
Mhm.
Leadership evolves over time. Your leadership skills will evolve, your outlook will evolve, your experience, of course, will evolve, and your goals and mission with it will evolve as well. And that's normal. The third thing is to really be patient as well. Don't feel like you need to do leadership perfectly right out of the gate. It
Mhm.
doesn't work like that, but have the confidence in yourself that you can figure it out. You will figure it out. Seek out the mentors that you respect and admire who can help guide you through the challenges. And then just enjoy the ups and downs of it. There's a great joy in the drama of life. There's great joy in the drama of leadership as well, which is
Yeah.
part of life as a whole. And ultimately, whatever we do as leaders in our personal and professional lives, it's shaping who we are. So really try to make the most out of those opportunities.
I really like that third one. Just kind of jump in. Jump in before you're ready.
Yeah.
Just jump in, see what happens. You're going to swim. You'll figure it out. You'll get to the other side. Just jump in and start figuring it out. So I really like that third one. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your genius ideas on how to be a leader and how to work through the process of being a leader.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much for having me again. It's always great to talk to you. And
Yeah,
I love the work that you're doing. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share these ideas.
anytime.
Appreciate that.